You have spent your life earning every breath, working, helping, giving, proving. You've carried others through storms and called it strength. But tell me, who taught you that love must always look like labor? Who told you that rest had to be earned? Somewhere long ago, you learned that slowing down was failure, that to stop meant you were lazy. And yet, your body has been whispering the truth all along. It doesn't need your guilt, it needs your gentleness. It doesn't want your hurry, it wants your trust. The world glorifies exhaustion and calls it achievement. But peace is not laziness. Peace is power under grace. You were never meant to live in permanent tension. You were meant to breathe, to soften, to listen to life unfolding without rushing to control it. Your nervous system is tired of being your soldier. It wants to be your friend again. Every ache, every tight muscle, every sleepless night, it's not weakness. It's a message. Please rest. Please let me recover. Your body is not betraying you. It's begging for balance. You do not have to earn the right to rest. You were born deserving of it. Even the earth rests, seasons turn, flowers sleep, the moon hides and returns. Why should you be the only one who never pauses? Life itself is proof that rest sustains creation. When you push yourself past kindness, your body starts speaking in symptoms: fatigue, irritation, pain. But when you stop and rest, healing begins where words cannot reach. Rest is not the opposite of progress. It is the soil that allows progress to bloom. Remember this truth: nothing beautiful grows in constant harvest. Crops rest, oceans ebb. Even your heartbeat alternates between contraction and release. To rest is not to quit, it is to harmonize with life's rhythm again. You may feel guilty when you sit still. A voice in your mind whispers you should be doing more. That voice is not truth, it's conditioning. It's the echo of a world that has forgotten how to love itself without productivity. You can silence it with one breath. Say gently, I am safe to rest. Again, I am allowed to rest. You will feel a soft surrender within your chest. That is your soul exhaling after years of holding its breath. You are not lazy. You are learning how to live in trust, not tension. For years you have mistaken rest for weakness. But true strength is the courage to stop when the world demands more. The ones who heal, create, and love deeply are those who know when to retreat into stillness and return renewed. If you never rest, your dreams collapse under the weight of fatigue. But when you honor rest, inspiration finds you again. Clarity returns. Life begins to flow instead of being forced. Rest doesn't delay your purpose, it refines it. Notice how nature never apologizes for resting. The sun sets each evening without guilt. The tree drops its leaves without shame. The bird does not sing all day. Life thrives through rhythm, not relentless motion. You are part of that same divine rhythm. Imagine your body as a loyal companion who has carried you through every demand, every heartbreak, every day you refuse to pause. Now place a hand over your heart and say thank you. You can rest now. Feel the relief ripple through your being. When you rest, you are not doing nothing, you are doing the sacred work of renewal. Every deep breath repairs. Every moment of quiet is a prayer. Every nap, every sigh, every pause becomes an affirmation. I choose peace over pressure. You deserve to rest simply because you exist. You deserve softness, even if no one else gives you permission. You deserve mornings without alarms, evenings without demands, and moments that belong only to your heart. If the guilt rises, let it. Then ask it, who taught you that love and exhaustion must coexist? That voice will fade, because it was never your own. Beneath it lies your original knowing. Life loves me most when I slow down to feel it. There is no medal for burning out. There is no prize for suffering silently. There is only the quiet joy of returning home to yourself. Rest is how you say, I matter. It is how you teach your inner child that peace is safe, that stillness is holy. When you rest, you restore the balance of giving and receiving. You become receptive again to love, to intuition, to divine guidance. Rest opens the door through which grace can finally enter. You do not have to chase healing when you allow it to come. So today, let yourself pause, turn off the noise, sit by the window, let your shoulders drop, let the world spin without your control. Whisper, I release the need to prove my worth. Feel how instantly your body understands what your mind forgot. Your worth is not measured by how much you do it, is measured by how openly you allow life to flow through you. And life flows easiest through a relaxed body and a trusting heart. Rest is not the end of action. It is the beginning of wisdom. If you need permission, this is it. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to stop, to cry, to breathe, to be. You are allowed to exist without producing, to heal without rushing, to love yourself without earning it. Take this affirmation with you. I am allowed to rest. I am safe in stillness. My peace is productive. My worth is constant. My body heals in silence. I deserve to rest without guilt. Repeat it as often as you need until your heart stops asking for permission. Because rest is not a reward at the end of struggle, it is a birthright. And the moment you honor it, your healing begins. I grew up in a world that taught me, as it taught so many of you, that worth was something to be proven. From the earliest days, I learned that being useful brought approval, and being still brought disapproval. Before I even understood the meaning of the word value, I learned to chase it through effort. I remember how simple moments of rest would draw sharp eyes or quiet scolding. A child's natural pause was mistaken for disobedience. I learned to stay busy, to appear occupied, to avoid the shadows of disappointment. In those small moments, I formed deep beliefs about myself and about life. It is remarkable how quickly a child absorbs the rules of survival. When I was praised, it was for being helpful, polite, quiet, or diligent. Rarely was I celebrated simply for existing. So I came to believe that goodness meant service, and service meant effort, and effort meant never stopping. You may have lived through similar lessons. You may have been told to keep busy as though silence were a danger. You may have been taught that usefulness keeps love near and idleness pushes it away. These teachings do not fade easily. They settle into the mind like old songs we hum without noticing. When love is tied to doing, the body responds by tightening. Muscles stiffen with vigilance. Shoulders lift as if to guard against correction. Breath becomes shallow, as though taking too much air is indulgence. Even the heart learns to beat with caution, unsure if it is allowed to rest. We do not realize how soon the body becomes the obedient servant of these early lessons. It stands alert in moments that require softness. It pushes forward when it longs to pause. It holds tension long after danger has passed, because it has been taught to fear disapproval more than exhaustion. Many families speak proudly of endurance. They glorify those who work without stopping. They reward those who carry burdens quietly. Fatigue becomes honorable, and pain becomes proof of character. In such homes, rest is seen not as care, but as abandonment of duty. School often continues the lesson. The child who finishes early is given more to do. The one who slows is labeled careless. The world begins to whisper the same refrain. There is always more waiting for you. Hurry becomes the rhythm of life. Stillness becomes a stranger. As these outer voices grow louder, they form an inner voice, one that says, do more, try harder, do not stop. Without realizing it, we begin to carry this voice everywhere. It sits beside us at breakfast, it follows us during work, it whispers at night when we long for peace. This voice can become so familiar that we mistake it for truth. We may believe that we are naturally restless, naturally driven, naturally unwilling to pause, but this is not our nature, it is our conditioning. Nature does not rush, yet everything is accomplished. When stillness feels unsafe, guilt rises. Guilt for sitting, guilt for breathing deeply, guilt for choosing ease over struggle. Guilt becomes a cloak, worn unconsciously, heavy across the shoulders, pressing down on the chest. It tells us we have no right to rest until every task is complete. I once lived by those rules. I believed that stopping would cause life to fall apart. I believed that I had to earn even the smallest acts of kindness toward myself. I believed that care was something reserved for others and duty was something reserved for me. But these beliefs created tension, not peace. They created pain, not strength. They did not make me worthy, they made me weary. And slowly I learned to question them. I learned to see that they were not sacred truths. They were simply old ideas passed down by those who did not know gentleness. It took time to unlearn those patterns. I began by noticing how self-criticism lived inside me. It spoke in a tone sharper than any voice around me. It told me I was lazy if I paused. It told me I must be better, faster, more helpful. It was a relentless taskmaster in the quiet of my own mind. When I softened toward myself, the voice softened too. When I allowed a moment of rest, it did not vanish immediately, but it grew quieter. I discovered that the mind responds to love just as the body does. It melts, it expands, it becomes less afraid. Many people believe that carrying others' burdens is the most loving act, but caring too much leaves us bent, weary, unable to care for ourselves. We confuse sacrifice with love, yet true love does not ask us to betray our own needs. True love asks us to uplift, not to deplete. I carried far more than belonged to me for many years. I said yes when I longed to say no. I offered help before being asked. I lived as though I must hold the entire world together with my own hands. But no one is meant to be an endless source of strength without renewal. When we live in constant tension, energy cannot flow freely. Healing cannot move through the body. Inspiration cannot reach the mind. The metaphysical truth is simple. What is tight cannot receive. What is strained cannot heal. What is hurried cannot hear the gentle guidance of inner wisdom. Rest is an opening. It is the softening of the heart, the releasing of the breath, the loosening of the shoulders. It is the moment when the body says thank. It is the gateway through which healing enters. When we deny rest, we deny the very force that restores us. For so long, I believed that rest was a luxury afforded to others, but not to me. But little by little, I discovered that rest is not indulgence, it is nourishment. It is the quiet place where the soul meets its own light again. It is the ground upon which clarity grows. The first time I allowed myself true rest, I felt uneasy. I waited for the world to collapse. I waited for the disapproving voices to return. I waited for some punishment for daring to stop. But nothing happened. Silence simply held me. Peace simply welcomed me. In that gentle pause, I realized something profound. Rest is a form of love. It is love for the body that carries us. It is love for the mind that tries its best. It is love for the heart that longs for safety. Rest is the very essence of kindness. When I understood this, I began to see that my old beliefs about rest were not truths, they were misunderstandings. They were stories told by people who had never been allowed to rest themselves. They were inherited patterns, not divine guidance. The moment we recognize that we were conditioned to believe rest must be earned, we begin to loosen that belief. We begin to soften our grip on the old stories. We begin to realize that approval is not something to chase, but something to give ourselves freely. As I reflect on my early life, I see clearly that the world around me admired those who worked without pause. They were called strong, dependable, responsible. But I also see the weariness in their eyes, the tension in their posture, the longing in their silence. Strength is not found in endless effort. Strength is found in the courage to stop, to breathe, to listen to the needs of the body. Strength is the willingness to honor oneself, even when old patterns urge us to push harder. Strength is the choice to love oneself enough to rest. In my own healing journey, I learned that the body remembers every moment of strain. It remembers the times we ignored its pleas. It remembers the nights we stayed awake worrying. It remembers the years we carried burdens too heavy for any one person. And it remembers when we finally choose peace. The first tender realization that rest is love can feel like sunlight after a long winter. It warms the heart. It soothes the mind. It teaches the body that it no longer needs to be on guard. It reminds us that life is not meant to be endured, but embraced. When we understand that rest is our birthright, the guilt begins to loosen. When we understand that rest does not diminish our worth, but reveals it, the old beliefs begin to dissolve. When we understand that rest nurtures the very energy we need to live fully, we stop fighting ourselves. I often tell people, you are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. And wholeness requires rest. Wholeness requires gentleness. Wholeness requires time to breathe, to reflect, to allow life's natural healing to rise within you. As you take in these words, notice what happens in your body. Notice if your shoulders relax just a little. Notice if your breath deepens. Notice if the thought of rest brings both longing and fear. Both are natural. Both are signs that you are awakening to a new understanding. The patterns you learned in childhood were not your fault. They were not wrong, they were simply incomplete. They lacked the wisdom of self-love. They lacked the knowledge that rest is not weakness but wisdom. They lack the truth that you deserve care simply because you exist. You no longer need to live according to those old rules. You can choose new thoughts. You can choose new beliefs. You can choose to say gently and kindly, I am allowed to rest. And each time you say it, the old tension softens a little more. Rest is an act of healing. It is an act of trust. It is an act of deep self-respect. And the moment you embrace it, your life begins to transform. Your body begins to heal. Your mind begins to quiet. Your heart begins to return to its natural state of peace. This is where your new journey begins. For many years, I believed my body was something to command. I asked it to work when it was tired, to hurry when it wanted to slow, to stay silent when it longed to speak. I treated its whispers as inconveniences, its fatigue as weakness, and its aches as something to push through. It took me a long time to understand that the body never lies. The mind can deceive itself with old fears and old stories, but the body speaks only truth. It speaks softly at first, like a gentle tap on the shoulder, a little tightness, a little heaviness, a little breathlessness that asks for attention. And when we ignore these small messages, the body speaks louder. Every symptom is a message. Every ache is a request. Every wave of fatigue is a loving reminder that we have wandered too far from our own center. I learned this slowly through my own healing. I learned it through illness, through pain, through the moments when life gently insisted that I stop. The body carries our entire emotional history. It carries memories we have forgotten. It carries disappointments we never expressed. It carries fear in the stomach, resentment in the lower back, sorrow in the chest, and pressure in the shoulders. And it waits patiently for us to listen. You may have noticed this in your own life. When you feel anxious, your breath becomes shallow. When you feel overwhelmed, your jaw tightens. When you feel unloved, your heart aches. When you feel unworthy, your posture collapses. The body reveals what the mind has tried to control. For years, my body lived in vigilance. It had learned that rest was dangerous, that stillness invited reprimand, that pausing meant I was falling behind. It did not know safety. It did not know softness. It prepared for disappointment the way a soldier prepares for battle. But the body is not meant to be a soldier. It is meant to be a friend, a companion, a teacher. It took me many years to discover this simple truth. When I finally began to listen, I realized my body had been speaking to me all along, begging me to rest, pleading for tenderness, longing for peace. Fatigue is not a flaw. It is a message that the body has given more than it can replenish. It is a gentle cry for renewal. Pain is not an enemy. It is the body pointing to a thought, a belief, a memory that needs compassion. And tension is not stubbornness. It is fear wrapped tightly around the muscles. Many people ask me, why does my body hurt when I've done nothing wrong? And I always answer softly, your body hurts because you have done too much without love. The body responds instantly to self-criticism. It responds instantly to pressure. It responds instantly to fear. But it also responds instantly to kindness. When we speak to our body with tenderness, something remarkable happens. The shoulders soften, the breath deepens, the stomach unwinds, the heart opens. Even the smallest gesture of self-approval begins to melt years of accumulated tension. I often tell people to place a hand over the heart and say, I am listening. The body hears this, the body responds, the body relaxes because it knows it is no longer alone. We forget that the body is alive with intelligence and memory. It feels every thought we think. It reacts to every belief we hold. When words are ignored, the body speaks through sensation. A tightening in the throat for words unspoken, a heaviness in the chest for grief unacknowledged, a pain in the lower back for burdens carried too long, a stiff neck for stubborn thoughts. These are not punishments, they are invitations. So many of us rush through life without noticing the messages within. We hurry from one task to another, pushing discomfort aside, hoping it will vanish if we ignore it. But the body persists, not to cause suffering, but to guide us toward a better way of living. I learned that rest is not only for the body, it is also for the mind. When the mind quiets, the body can repair. When the mind stops insisting, the body can breathe. When the mind releases old fears, the body expands into peace. They work together as partners in our healing. There were times in my life when I would wake with aching muscles, but instead of asking, what is my body telling me, I would ask, what must I push through today? I believed my discomfort was an inconvenience rather than a messenger. It took patience and humility to change this belief. The body longs for safety. It longs to relax. It longs to be treated with respect. When we rest, the body sighs with relief. When we offer gratitude, it glows with warmth. When we breathe deeply, it remembers that peace is possible. We do not realize how much our bodies have endured until they finally exhale. Many people fear resting because they believe rest will bring their buried emotions to the surface. And in many ways, this is true. Stillness allows the unspoken to rise. Quiet allows the forgotten to return. But this is not something to fear. This is how healing begins. Emotional burdens settle into the muscles when they have no other place to go. The back holds responsibilities. The stomach holds dread. The throat holds unexpressed truth. The pelvis holds shame. The eyes hold sorrow. Every part of the body becomes a journal of the soul. When we rest, we give these emotions room to move. They begin to loosen. They begin to soften. They begin to release. And as they release, the body becomes lighter, freer, and more open to life. Forcing oneself through pain only deepens the wound. I learned this the hard way. Whenever I pushed past my own needs, my body responded with louder cries. When I ignored those cries, they became symptoms. When I ignored the symptoms, they became greater lessons. But when I stopped pushing, everything changed. When I offered myself approval instead of judgment, my body relaxed. When I chose forgiveness instead of blame, my heart softened. When I allowed silence, clarity arose. The body needs kindness more than anything else we can offer. Self-approval is a medicine. It works more quickly than we imagine. It does not require perfection. It requires sincerity. When we say, "I approve of myself," the body hears, "I am safe." When we say, "I am gentle with myself," the body hears, "I may rest." Every thought we think is a message to the body. Angry thoughts create tension. Fearful thoughts create contraction. Loving thoughts create ease. Joyful thoughts create expansion. The body mirrors the mind as faithfully as water mirrors the sky. People often ask me about metaphysical causation. They wonder why illness appears or why fatigue lingers, and I tell them gently that illness is often the last stage of a long process. Before the body speaks, the mind whispers. Before pain arises, the emotions plead for attention. Unrest within reveals unrest in thought. When we think we must earn love, the body tightens. When we think we are alone, the chest constricts. When we think we are unworthy, the spine curves. These are not punishments, they are reflections. When we choose new thoughts, the body responds with gratitude. When we say, "I am willing to release the past," the shoulders drop. When we say, "Life supports me," the breath deepens. When we say, "I deserve peace," the nervous system softens like a flower opening to the morning light. Listening to the body is an act of respect. It is an act of devotion. It is an act of healing. It is saying to yourself, your needs matter, your comfort matters, your well-being matters. And the moment you say this, the inner landscape begins to change. Rest is the doorway through which intuition enters. When the mind quiets, the inner wisdom speaks. It offers gentle guidance. It reveals what has been hidden. It shows the next loving step. But it cannot speak over the noise of constant striving. When we rest, we realign ourselves with the natural rhythm of life. We remember that we are part of the same wisdom that turns the seasons, lifts the tides, and opens the petals of every flower. Life does not rush. Life flows. And when we flow with it, we find peace. Simple acts become sacred. A long breath becomes a prayer. A quiet moment becomes an awakening. A soft sigh becomes an offering. These small gestures of attention nourish the spirit more deeply than hours of effort. You do not need grand rituals to heal. You need presence. You need willingness. You need gentleness. You need the courage to stop long enough to hear the messages your body has been speaking for years. Place your hand over your heart and listen. Listen to the faint rhythm that has accompanied you through every joy, every sorrow, every hope, every disappointment. That rhythm is your constant companion. It speaks in a language older than words, and it whispers, "Rest, rest, rest." You deserve a peaceful body. You deserve a calm mind. You deserve the kind of stillness that nourishes the soul. When you listen to the body, you are listening to life itself, and life always speaks with love. For so many of us, the moment we sit down, an old uneasiness rises within. It is subtle at first, just a faint stirring beneath the ribs, a small voice that says, "Should you really be resting?" This voice is not natural, it is learned. It is the echo of years spent believing that stillness is something to apologize for. Guilt often arrives before the rest even begins. We may place our hands in our lap, let our shoulders drop, begin to breathe, and there it is, a tightness in the chest, a whisper of self-doubt, a sense that we must defend our pause. This guilt is ancient. It comes from teachings handed down long before we had a choice. When I look back on my own life, I see clearly how guilt shaped my early years. I felt guilty if I did not work. I felt guilty if I chose pleasure over duty. I felt guilty if I asked for help, or if I needed comfort, or if I simply wished to sit quietly without explanation. I believed rest was something I had to earn through effort or suffering. Many of us grew up in homes where our parents carried their own guilt like a heavy mantle. They too had been taught that their worth depended on endless giving. They knew nothing else. They could not teach what they were never taught, the deep truth that rest is natural and necessary. This inherited guilt becomes a family heirloom. It passes from one generation to the next, not through words alone, but through silence, posture, and example. Children learn by watching. They see their parents rise before dawn, work through pain, push past tears. They learn that life is something to endure, not to savor. So when rest enters their lives, it feels foreign, unsettled, even shameful. They may sit down with the desire to breathe deeply, yet feel a sudden need to justify themselves. I will rest only for a moment. I deserve this because I worked hard. I have earned a brief pause. This bargaining reveals how deeply guilt has woven itself into the mind. But guilt is not a teacher of truth. It is a shadow that forms when we turn away from love. It is a misunderstanding, not a moral compass. Guilt cannot guide us into greater peace. It can only bind us to old patterns. We must understand where guilt comes from before we can release it. Guilt around stillness begins when children are praised for obedience, silence, or productivity, but not for simply being themselves. When a child is scolded for daydreaming or told to keep busy, rest becomes associated with disapproval. That association lingers for decades. Even in adulthood, when no one is watching, the mind watches itself. It repeats the same old criticisms once spoken by others. It becomes the strict parent, the impatient teacher, the weary guardian of outdated rules. We cannot release guilt through force. We release it through understanding. When we recognize that our guilt was never ours to begin with, it begins to dissolve. When we see that guilt is simply a memory of old voices, we begin to reclaim our freedom. Forgiveness is the bridge from guilt to peace. We forgive ourselves for believing we had to earn rest. We forgive our families for passing down their own fears. We forgive the world for glorifying exhaustion. And we forgive the younger versions of ourselves who tried so hard to be perfect. Forgiveness is not approval of what happened. It is the soft, steady release of its hold on your heart. When you forgive, you step out of the past and into the present. You create room for gentleness. You create room for breath. You create room for rest. I often place my hand over my heart and whisper, "I am safe." These words dissolve guilt like sunlight dissolves morning fog. Guilt thrives in fear, but it cannot survive in safety. When we assure ourselves that we are safe, guilt loosens its grip. Another truth I learned is that guilt loses its power when we offer ourselves approval. "I approve of myself" is one of the most healing phrases we can ever speak. When we say it sincerely, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, and the mind softens into trust. Approval is the antidote to guilt. Guilt says you are wrong for wanting rest. Approval says you deserve peace because you are alive. Guilt says you must justify your stillness. Approval says your well-being matters. Guilt says do more. Approval says be. When we speak to ourselves lovingly, guilt begins to crumble. It has no foundation when love is present. Love brings light to the places where guilt once hid. You may feel guilt rise when you choose to rest. If it does, do not push it away. Welcome it with kindness. Ask it gently, Who taught you this? Guilt will show you the old memory, the old rule, the old voice. And once you see it clearly, you will understand that it is no longer needed. Guilt belongs to a time when you did not know your own worth, but you are learning now. You are awakening to a deeper truth. Your value is not tied to your effort. Your worth is not measured by your productivity. Your place in this world is not earned through strain. You are a spiritual being. You are a soul with a body, not a machine with a schedule. Machines must justify their use. Souls do not. Souls rest because rest is part of their natural rhythm. Souls pause because quiet is how they hear themselves. As guilt fades, innocence returns. A sweet, childlike innocence that remembers how to rest without question, how to lie in the grass and feel the sun, how to sit by the window and watch the clouds, how to breathe without apology. Innocence knows no guilt around stillness. Rest restores this innocence. It brings you back to the person you were before the world taught you to hurry. It reconnects you with the softness beneath the armor, the gentleness beneath the duty, the tenderness beneath the tension. It brings you home to yourself. There is a profound metaphysical shift that occurs when guilt dissolves. You move from duty to devotion. Duty is heavy and pressured. Devotion is light and willing. Duty strains the body. Devotion soothes it. Duty says I must, devotion says I choose. When you rest from devotion, not duty, your entire experience changes. You are no longer resting because you are exhausted. You are resting because you love yourself. You are no longer resting as a reward. You are resting as a birthright. You are no longer resting with fear. You are resting with trust. This shift transforms the heart. It transforms the breath. It transforms the very energy of the home around you. Those who love you will feel the difference. They will sense the peace you carry. They will learn from your example that rest is holy. When guilt fades, the body is free to heal. Muscles release their grip. The nervous system unwinds. The breath finds a deeper rhythm. Sleep becomes more restful. The heart feels safer. You become receptive again to life's goodness. So if guilt rises, speak to it gently. Tell it, your purpose has passed. I no longer need you to keep me safe. I am safe now. I am loved now. I am allowed to rest. Say it softly. Say it often. Say it until your body believes it. Say it until your mind quiets. Say it until guilt releases its hold completely. You are not here to live a life of strain. You are here to live a life of love. And love begins with rest. Love begins with listening. Love begins with choosing peace over pressure. Rest is an act of faith. It is trusting that life will continue without your constant effort. It is trusting that the world does not require your sacrifice to spin. It is trusting that you are supported by something greater than your own will. You deserve rest. You deserve ease. You deserve stillness. You deserve the peace that comes when guilt dissolves and innocence returns. Let yourself feel this truth not only with your mind, but with your body. Let it soften you. Let it free you. Rest is not selfish. Rest is not wasteful. Rest is not wrong. Rest is a loving embrace of the self that has waited years for permission. Rest is the gentle choice to no longer abandon yourself. As you breathe now, feel the guilt lifting. Feel it rise like mist from a warming field. Feel it dissolve into nothing. Feel the sweetness beneath it. Feel the freedom. Feel the peace. You are allowed to rest. And rest, dear one, is the pathway back to you. There comes a moment in every healing journey when we begin to feel the pulse of life itself. It is subtle at first, like a tide shifting within the heart. A quiet invitation, a soft reminder, a whisper that says, life moves in rhythms, not in relentless lines. When we pause long enough to listen, we realize that rest is not an interruption, it is the very flow we have been missing. I have always loved watching nature because it teaches without words. It teaches effortlessly, in silence, through the simple honesty of its existence. The sun rises and sets without apology. The moon swells and retreats without guilt. The tides pull back as faithfully as they advance. Trees bloom and then they withdraw. Nothing in nature rushes, nothing in nature demands constant output, and yet everything thrives. For a long time, I believed I had to be the exception. I believed I had to keep moving, keep giving, keep producing, or I would lose my worth. I lived as though I were separate from the rhythms that govern all of life, but we are not separate. We are made of the same intelligence, the same cycles, the same breath that moves through the entire universe. Life breathes us, and we resist by holding our breath. Life asks us to ebb, and we insist on flowing. Life offers rest, and we choose strain. It is no wonder we feel depleted because we are living contrary to the very wisdom that sustains creation. When I began to honor the natural rhythm of life, something changed within me. I felt a softening, a loosening of the tight grip I had held on my responsibilities. I realized that every time I pushed myself beyond kindness, I was stepping out of harmony with the universe. And each time I allowed myself to rest, I was stepping back into grace. Rest harmonizes us with life's divine order. It places us back in the circle of receiving. So many of us give endlessly, believing that giving is proof of goodness. But giving without receiving is not generosity, it is imbalance. It exhausts the spirit and drains the heart. Nature understands perfect balance. The tree gives shade, but it also receives sunlight. The flower gives beauty, but it also receives nourishment from the soil. The ocean gives waves, but it also receives rivers. Every act of giving is supported by an act of receiving. Humans forget this. We try to be oceans that only give, suns that only shine, trees that only shelter. We forget to receive. We forget to allow. We forget to rest. And the moment we stop receiving, our giving becomes strained, our love becomes tired, our joy becomes brittle. When we rest, we receive. We allow life to pour back into us. We open our hearts to replenishment. We reconnect with the quiet nourishment that the universe has been offering us all along. Rest is how we refill the cup that love flows from. There is a lovely truth I discovered through my own healing. Intuition grows in silence. It does not rise from chaos or hurry. It does not shout over the noise of constant effort. It appears in the soft moments when the mind settles, when the breath slows, when the body feels safe enough to be still. Inner guidance becomes clear when the body softens. It is like watching ripples settle on a lake. When the water is agitated, nothing is reflected clearly. But when the surface quiets, everything becomes visible. The same is true of the heart. Only in rest does it reflect the guidance we seek. I found that my most inspired ideas came during moments of pause. When I sat quietly with a cup of tea, when I walked slowly in the fresh air, when I allowed myself a gentle afternoon of doing nothing at all, that is when clarity would arrive. Not through strain, not through force, through ease. We are taught to chase answers, but answers come when we stop chasing. They come when we open ourselves to receive. They come when our minds are soft enough to hear them. Rest is the doorway through which this wisdom enters. So many people feel lost because they never stop long enough to hear their own inner voice. They fill every moment with tasks, noise, or worries. They fear stillness because they believe stillness is empty. But stillness is not empty, it is full. It is rich with guidance, insight, peace, love. When we choose rest, we become receptive again. The heart listens, the mind clears, the spirit wakes. We remember that we are part of a much larger rhythm, a gentle cycle of giving and receiving that is always present, always supportive, always available. Rest renews creativity, it renews inspiration, it renews faith in ourselves. It renews the belief that life wants to help us, not harm us. When we are tired, the world seems dull. When we are rested, the world glows again. Colors return. Ideas return. Hope returns. I once met a woman who told me she had lost her purpose. She had pushed herself for so long that she could no longer feel joy in anything. She believed she needed to work harder to rediscover her path. Instead, I asked her to rest. She resisted at first. She believed she had no time, but after a few days of gentle quiet, she began to hear her inner guidance again. Her purpose had not left her. She had simply been too exhausted to hear it. This is true for so many of us. Rest does not take us away from life. Rest brings us back to life. It restores the clarity that strain erodes. It restores the intuition that fear muffles. It restores the energy that worry drains. Nature never apologizes for pausing. When the sun sets, it does not ask permission. When the tree sheds its leaves, it does not feel guilty. When the ocean withdraws into low tide, it does not fear disapproval. Nature honors its needs, and in doing so, it remains balanced. If nature, which sustains the world, rests without guilt, why shouldn't you? Why should you be the only part of creation that denies itself the renewal it needs? When we stop pushing against life, the heart becomes receptive. A relaxed heart is an open heart. It receives love more easily. It receives beauty more deeply. It receives guidance more clearly. Rest opens the door through which grace enters. Grace is always available, but it cannot reach us when we are tense or hurried. It waits patiently for the moment we soften, the moment we breathe, the moment we stop trying to control everything through sheer effort. Grace moves through openness, not strain. Sometimes people ask me, how do I know if life is guiding me? And I always say, you will know when you are quiet. Life speaks in whispers, not shouts. It nudges, it soothes, it suggests. It never forces. And its messages arise most clearly when we are willing to pause and receive. Rest is not a retreat from life, it is a reunion with life. It is returning to the rhythm that has always been here, waiting for us to remember. It is reconnecting with the divine wisdom that lives within every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of stillness. When you rest, you step into alignment with the same intelligence that designed the stars, the seasons, and the tides. You become part of the great rhythm of giving and receiving that moves through all of existence. Allow yourself to experience this rhythm now. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breath deepen. Feel how the body responds instantly to softness. Feel how the mind becomes quieter when you give yourself permission to rest. Feel how your heart begins to receive what it has long been denied. Life will meet you here. Life will support you here. Life will restore you here. You are not alone. You are held in a rhythm older than time. You are part of a universe that rests, renews, and rises again. And when you honor this rhythm, you honor yourself. There comes a moment in every healing journey when rest is no longer something you try to squeeze into the corners of your life, but something you begin to honor as a way of living. I reached that moment slowly, gently, after years of listening to my body, questioning my beliefs, and releasing old guilt. One day I realized that peace was not something to visit, it was something to live within. Choosing peace is an act of devotion to yourself. It is saying, I matter. It is saying, my well-being matters. It is saying, I no longer measure my worth by how much I struggle. It is a shift so deep that it changes the way you breathe, the way you think, the way you move through the world. When I began to choose peace, I noticed that my life rearranged itself around this decision. I felt less drawn to people who thrived on conflict. I felt less willing to carry burdens that were never mine. I felt less eager to prove myself. Instead, I felt guided toward gentleness, toward softness, toward rest. Rest becomes a sacred declaration of self-worth when you no longer wait until you are collapsing to allow it. When you rest because you love yourself, not because you have finally earned it. When you pause because you choose to, not because your body forces you to stop. This is the shift from survival to love. A peaceful life is not built overnight. It is built moment by moment, breath by breath, choice by choice. Every time you choose a kind thought over a fearful one, you soften the path ahead. Every time you speak gently to yourself, you plant seeds of peace within your mind. Every time you rest without guilt, you reclaim a part of your freedom. Gentleness is a strength that many people overlook. They think strength is loud, forceful, unyielding. But true strength is calm. True strength is steady. True strength is being able to remain loving in a world that taught you to harden. It takes courage to soften. It takes bravery to be gentle with yourself. When you rebuild your life around gentleness instead of strain, you begin to notice small miracles. You wake with more clarity. Your breath deepens. Your body feels more at home within itself. You make decisions with greater ease. You move through your day with a sense of grace instead of urgency. These changes are subtle at first, but they are profound. Daily affirmations help nourish this new way of living. They become the food for the mind, the reminders of your truth. I choose peace. I am gentle with myself. My rest is holy. Life supports me in every step. When you repeat these affirmations, you water the seeds of peace. I learned long ago that the mind believes what we tell it. When we speak words of fear, the mind tightens. When we speak words of love, the mind softens. When we speak words of peace, the mind settles. This is why affirmations are so powerful. They reshape the inner landscape from which our lives grow. Rest is essential to spiritual connection. When we are constantly rushing, we cannot hear the soft guidance of our intuition. We cannot feel the quiet nudges of life. We cannot sense the divine whispers that guide us toward healing. Yet when we choose peace, we create space for this sacred communication. The inner child, who may have been scolded for resting or shamed for wanting comfort, heals through gentleness. When you rest without guilt, you teach that child that stillness is safe, that comfort is allowed, that peace does not lead to punishment. You become the loving presence you once needed. I often place a hand upon my heart and say, "Little one, you are safe now." These words carry a soft magic. They bridge the years. They soothe the memories. They tell the child within that the world is no longer a place of hurried demands. Peace becomes a homecoming. When you honor rest, you naturally return to your inner wisdom. You begin to notice what feels right and what feels heavy. You begin to move toward what nourishes you and gently release what depletes you. Peace is a clear voice. It does not shout, it guides. As your inner dialogue shifts, your outer world transforms. You speak with more kindness. You listen with more patience. You choose with more clarity. You find yourself drawn to environments that support your well-being. You naturally attract people who respect your boundaries and honor your peace. When guilt lifts, a great lightness enters the heart. You feel as though you are meeting yourself for the first time. You discover qualities buried beneath years of tension, calmness, playfulness, curiosity, tenderness. These qualities were always there. They were simply waiting for permission to bloom. The more you rest, the more harmonious your relationships become. Rest softens irritation. It eases resentment. It quiets defensiveness. When you are rested, You are more generous with your patience and your understanding. You are more loving because you are not running on emptiness. Rest allows you to receive love. Many people give love easily but struggle to receive it. Their hearts are shielded by old fears or old wounds. Rest opens the heart, making it receptive again. When you are peaceful, you can let love in without resistance. Ease enters your interactions. Conversations unfold more gently. Conflicts resolve with less effort. You see others through softer eyes. You judge less. You expect less strain. Peace changes the way you live within yourself and with others. As you rest more, you become more attuned to the rhythm of life. Decisions no longer feel forced. Solutions appear when needed. Opportunities come without being chased. You learn to trust the timing of life. You learn to trust that you are guided. Peace invites more peace. It builds upon itself. It grows stronger each time you choose it. It becomes a way of breathing, a way of thinking, a way of loving yourself. It becomes the foundation upon which your days are built. Many people believe that peace belongs to quiet places or special moments. But peace is something you carry within you. It travels with you into crowded rooms, busy tasks, and difficult conversations. When peace becomes your foundation, you bring calm to every circumstance. To choose peace is to choose yourself. It is to choose a life where your nervous system is no longer a battlefield. It is to choose a life where your mind no longer wages war against your own worth. It is to choose a life where your heart is no longer weighed down by guilt or fear. Rest is the physical expression of this choice. Every time you rest, you are saying, "My life is mine." Every time you rest, you are saying, "I will not abandon myself." Every time you rest, you are saying, "I walk in love." Peace is not an escape. It is a return to wisdom, return to innocence, return to the truth of who you are. You were not born into strain, you were born into love. And peace is how you find your way back to that love. As you breathe now, imagine your life shaped by peace. Imagine your mornings beginning with ease. Imagine your days flowing gently. Imagine your nights filled with deep rest. Imagine your heart free from guilt. Imagine your body relaxed, open, receptive. You can choose this life. You can choose it again and again. Peace is not a distant dream, it is a decision. A soft decision, a loving decision, a decision you make each time you rest, each time you breathe deeply, each time you treat yourself with compassion. Your rest is not a pause from living, it is living. It is the essence of your healing, the foundation of your joy, the cradle of your well-being. When you rest, you honor the divine within you. You honor the life that flows through you. You honor the truth that you deserve ease. Now, gently place your hand over your heart. Feel its quiet rhythm. Feel how faithfully it has carried you. Whisper softly, "I choose peace. I am allowed to rest. My life blossoms when I am gentle with myself." Let these words settle within you. Let them soften every place that has felt tense. Let them nourish every part of you that has waited for permission to breathe. Peace is your home. Rest is your doorway. Step through it as often as you need. Step through it without guilt. Step through it with love. Your life begins anew each time you rest.